who were the Knights Templar. Founded around 1118 as a monastic military order devoted to the protection of pilgrims traveling to the Holy Land following the Christian capture of Jerusalem during the First Crusade, the Knights Templar quickly became one of the richest and most influential groups of the Middle Ages. Thanks to lavish donations from the crowned heads of Europe, eager to curry favor with the fierce knights. By the turn of the 14th century, the Templars had established a system of castles, churches and banks throughout Western Europe. And it was this astonishing wealth that would lead to their downfall. The Knights Templar was a large organization of devout Christians during the medieval era that carried out an important mission: to protect European travelers visiting sites in the Holy Land while also carrying out military operations. A wealthy, powerful and mysterious order that has fascinated historians and the public for centuries. Tales of the Knights Templar, their financial acumen, their military prowess and their work on behalf of Christianity during the Crusades still circulate throughout modern culture. After Christian armies in 1099 captured Jerusalem from Muslim control during the Crusades, groups of pilgrims from across Western Europe started visiting the Holy Land. Many of them, however, were robbed and killed during their journey. Around 1118, a French knight named Hugues de Payens created a military order along with 8 relatives and acquaintances, calling it the Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon, later known simply as the Knights Templar. With the support of Baldwin II, the ruler of Jerusalem, they set up headquarters on that city's sacred Temple Mount, from which they took their name, and pledged to protect Christian visitors to Jerusalem. The Pope's endorsement. Initially, the Knights Templar faced criticism from some religious leaders. But in 1129, the group received the formal endorsement of the Catholic Church and support from Bernard of Clairvaux, a prominent French abbot. Bernard authored in praise of the new knighthood, a text that supported the Knights Templar and bolstered their growth. In 1139, Pope Innocent II issued a papal bull that allowed the Knights Templar special rights. Among them, the Templars were exempt from paying taxes, permitted to build their own oratories, and held to no one's authority, except the Pope's. The Knights Templars at work. The Knights Templar set up a prosperous network of banks and gained enormous financial influence. Their banking system allowed religious pilgrims to deposit assets in their home countries and withdraw funds in the Holy Land. The order became known for its austere code of conduct and signature style of dress, which featured a white habit emblazoned with a simple red cross. Members swore an oath of poverty, chastity and obedience. They weren't allowed to drink, gamble or swear. Prayer was essential to their daily life, and the Templars expressed particular adoration for the Virgin Mary. As the Knights Templar grew in size and status, it established new chapters throughout Western Europe. At the height of their influence, the Templars boasted a sizable fleet of ships, owned the Mediterranean island of Cyprus, and served as a primary bank and lending institution to European monarchs and nobles. Expanded duties of the Knights. Though its original purpose was to protect pilgrims from danger, the Knights Templar progressively expanded its duties. They became defenders of the Crusader states in the Holy Land and were known as brave, highly skilled warriors. The group developed a reputation as fierce fighters during the Crusades, driven by religious fervor and forbidden from retreating unless significantly outnumbered. The Templars built numerous castles and fought battles against Islamic armies. Their fearless style of fighting became a model for other military orders. The fall of the Knights Templar. In the late 12th century, Muslim armies retook Jerusalem and turned the tide of the Crusades, forcing the Knights Templar to relocate several times. The fall of Acre in 1291 marked the destruction of the last remaining Crusader refuge in the Holy Land. European support of the military campaigns in the Holy Land began to erode over the decades that followed. Additionally, many secular and religious leaders became increasingly critical of the Templars' wealth and power. By 1303, the Knights Templar lost its foothold in the Muslim world and established a base of operations in Paris. There, King Philip IV of France resolved to bring down the order, perhaps because the Templars had denied the indebted ruler additional loans. Philip IV of France began his campaign to quash the Templars on September 14, 1307, when he sent sealed orders to his officers across the kingdom, with instructions that they not be opened until the night of October 12. The king had good reason for secrecy. His plan, to arrest every Templar in France, would have been unthinkable even a few years earlier. Not only were the Templars to be arrested, and their property seized, but they were to be imprisoned, interrogated and, if necessary, tortured. The instructions added, "You are to promise them pardon and favor if they confess the truth, but if not, you are to acquaint them that they will be condemned to death." Arrests and executions. For the Templars, that end began in the early morning hours of Friday, October 13, 1307. A month earlier, secret documents had been sent by couriers throughout France. The papers included lurid details and whispers of black magic and scandalous sexual rituals. They were sent by King Philip IV of France, an avaricious monarch. They wouldn't be the first group Philip had targeted, largely to fill the royal coffers. In 1292 he had arrested the Lombards, wealthy Italian merchants, seized their property and forced them to buy French nationality from him if they wished to stay. In 1306, he ordered the arrest of some 100,000 French Jews, along with the confiscation of their property. They were told to leave the kingdom within a month on pain of death, writes Dan Jones in his 2017 book, The Templars. In the days and weeks that followed that fateful Friday, more than 600 Templars were arrested, including Grand Master Jacques de Molay, and the order's treasurer. Even though individual Templars had taken a vow of poverty, the order had become enormously wealthy over the decades, accumulating fleets of ships and vast property holdings throughout Europe. While they were often referred to as the Knights Templar, only a minority of the group's members were actually knights, others were priests and serving brethren, who came to hold a wide range of jobs. By 1300, many were essentially bankers. In London, for example, the group operated a system of national and international credit and finance, notes British historian Stephen Howard in his book, The Knights Templar. Kings, merchants and noblemen deposited gold, silver and jewels with them for safekeeping, and came to them for loans, or to make payments to people overseas. They even seem to have invented a medieval version of the traveler's check. The men were charged with a wide array of offenses including heresy, devil worship and spitting on the cross, homosexuality, fraud and financial corruption. The Templars were kept in isolation and fed meager rations that often amounted to just bread and water. Nearly all were brutally tortured. One common practice used by medieval inquisitors was the strapdo, in which the hands of the accused are tied behind their backs, and then suspended in the air by a rope around their wrists, intended to dislocate the shoulders. Many of the men were likely stretched on the infamous rack, or had their feet dipped in oil and held over a fire to burn. Given the extreme conditions, it's not surprising that within weeks, Hundreds of Templars confessed to false charges, including Jacques de Molay. Pope Clement V was horrified. Despite the fact that he'd been elected almost solely because of Philip's influence, he feared crossing the extremely popular Templars. The Knights' coerced confessions, however, forced his hands. Philip, who had anticipated Clement's reaction, made sure the allegations against the Templars included detailed descriptions of their supposed heresy, counting on the gossipy, salacious accounts to carry much weight with the Church. Clement issued a papal bull ordering the Western kings to arrest Templars living in their lands. Few followed the papal request, but the fate of the French Templars had already been sealed. Their lands and money were confiscated and officially dispersed to another religious order, the Hospiters. However, it's thought that King Philip and King Edward II of England seized most of the Knights Templars' wealth. Within weeks of their confessions, many of Templars recanted and Clement shut down the Inquisition trials in early 1308. The Templars lingered in their cells for 2 years before Philip had more than 50 of them burned at the stake in 1310. 2 years later, Clement formally dissolved the order, though he did so without saying they'd been guilty as charged. In the spring of 1314, Grand Master Molay and several other Templars were burned at the stake in Paris, bringing an end to their remarkable era, and launching an even long-lasting theory about the evil possibilities of Friday the 13th. The Knights Templar today. The Catholic Church has acknowledged that the persecution of the Knights Templar was unjustified. The Church claims that Pope Clement was pressured by secular rulers to destroy the order. While most historians agree that the Knights Templar fully disbanded 700 years ago, there are some people who believe the order went underground and remains in existence in some form to this day. In the 18th century, some groups, most notably the Freemasons, revived several of the medieval knights' symbols, rituals and traditions. Currently, there are several international organizations styled after the Knights Templar that the public can join. These groups have representatives around the world and aim to uphold the values and traditions of the original medieval order. Throughout the years, various tales have surfaced about the Knights' mysterious work. More recently, stories about the legendary Templars have found their way into popular books and movies. Some historians have claimed that the Knights Templar may have secretly guarded the Shroud of Turin, a linen cloth believed to be placed on Jesus Christ's body before burial, for hundreds of years after the Crusades ended. Another widespread belief is that the Knights discovered and kept religious artifacts and relics, such as the Holy Grail, the Ark of the Covenant and parts of the cross from Christ's crucifixion. Various other ideas and myths exist about the Knights Templar's secret operations. The popular novel and film The Da Vinci Code presents a theory that the Templars were involved in a conspiracy to preserve the bloodline of Jesus Christ. Although much of these speculations are considered fictional, there's no question that the Knights Templar have provoked intrigue and fascination and will likely continue to do so for years to come.